Hey there, everybody. Ellyn Marsh here with Kevin and Michael from the Pod De Deux Women of Broadway Summer Series. We're here this summer to celebrate the big steps taken in our industry. The fact that 9 different women choreographed or were slated to choreograph 10 different musicals this year is huge and deserves celebration. That step has led to changes in the foundation to theater, putting women at the forefront of choreography in our industry, which is amazing. But there's obviously something else missing. People, specifically women of color, are missing.
So while we've gotten to the peak of this major hill in Broadway history, there's still very clearly a mountain to climb.
Yeah, it's true that we're all in this together. And while we are celebrating women, it doesn't go unnoticed that this industry is specifically missing artists, choreographers, and people of color.
So hopefully our podcast can open this dialogue further, and especially some of the projects coming up on Pod De Deux podcast later this summer and fall, focusing on the racial injustices in the dance world. And while we're on the subject of celebrating women in theater, let's just get some more women of color in there.
That's right. Thank you. Thanks for listening to the show. Thanks for loving dance and theater. And thanks for supporting us. And now, the Pod De Deux podcast. Welcome back to the Pod De Deux podcast. I am your host, Michael Mahany, alongside, as always, 2 of my favorite Broadway icons, Ellyn Marie Marsh and Kevin Michael Raponey.
Icon.
There they are right there. Hi, guys.
Hey.
Icons.
Oh, thank you.
You're the sweetest. We are back again with another episode in our summer series, The Women of Broadway. And this week we've got another badass female choreographer from Broadway's unprecedented 2019-2020 season for you to hear from and celebrate.
That's right. This week we're chatting with Lucy Hind, the choreographer and movement director behind the international smash hit Girl from the North Country, which opened at Broadway's Belasco Theater back on March 5th. Lucy, by the way, is not only a badass choreographer and movement director, she's also a mom.
That's right. She is. She's an all-around superhero, and she also happens to be a part of a historic year on Broadway. Unprecedented, I believe, as Kevin said, which leads us to this, a reminder of why we're all here. Kevin?
Obviously, at Pod De Deux, we love to talk dance, chat with choreographers, and interview artists. But this summer series, The Women of Broadway, is specifically focused on the 9 women who choreographed or were hired to choreograph Broadway shows this year.
That's right. Now, the number 9 is key. I say this every episode, but it's always worth mentioning, and it's why we're here. When you think about the fact that there were 14 new musicals slated to come to Broadway this year, and 9 different women were hired to choreograph or create the movement to 10 of them, that's remarkable. It's worth celebrating because nothing like that has ever happened before.
Yes, and since there isn't a Tony Award ceremony this summer due to the COVID-19 crisis, we're celebrating their work and poking and prodding that huge crack in the glass ceiling of Broadway choreography that developed this year by bringing you a chance to hear from as many of those choreographers as we possibly can.
So why don't we start right now? Let's get into it. Without any further ado, why don't we bring in our guest for the day? There she is,
Yay.
Ladies and gentlemen, Girl from the North Country choreographer, Lucy Hind. Hi, welcome to the show, Lucy.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for dealing with our technical difficulties that we had this morning. But why don't we let everyone know a little bit about you before we start the interview. Yeah.
Born in South Africa, choreographer and movement director Lucy Hind has been part of the team that brought us Girl from the North Country this year to Broadway. She's worked on the show since the world's premiere at London's Old Vic Theatre back in 2017, for which she won critical acclaim. She also is responsible for shows like The Last Ship, which was in UK, Toronto, and the recent US tour, The Light in the Piazza in London, LA, and Chicago, Ugly Lies the Bone at the National Theatre in London, Miss Littlewood at the Royal Shakespeare Company, The Merchant of Venice at the Shakespeare's Globe and US tour.
Lucy is also an artistic associate at Slung Low Theatre, works regularly on television for the BBC, was the movement director for Truth Seekers for Amazon Studios, and as I said in the opening, an all-around superhero. So, Lucy Hind, welcome to the Pod De Deux podcast. We are so happy to have you here. I know I said that before, but we are very, very excited to have you on the show today. So, Girl from North Country. It is a massive international hit musical featuring the music of Bob Dylan, but it was your show that was on Broadway this year. It's also had a West End company that inspired the transfer, but just for folks who may not know the show itself yet or didn't get a chance to see it prior to the industry shutdown, can you give us just a little insight as to what the show is and how the movement plays into what it is?
Sure. It's a really special and unique show, and when we first started making it, the joy of it was that we didn't know what it was going to be, and it's evolved into this kind of really beautiful piece of poetry. It's a story which is set in the 1930s in Duluth, Minnesota, which was Bob Dylan's birthplace, but it's not a biographical piece about Bob Dylan. It's about a boarding house where individuals and families come and go. It's incredibly poignant at the moment because it's about people dealing with a situation and especially a social and economical situation where people are really at the lowest of the low times in their life. And I heard a quote the other day. Somebody said, we're all in the same storm, but we're not in the same boat. And I love that description for this lockdown period, but also for the show, which is about we are all facing these huge turbulent times, but the characters in the show are all in different boats. They come and go in the boarding house. Some are looking for love, some are looking for new opportunity, and the story is really just about humanity and hope, and set to the backdrop of Bob Dylan's music, which is unbelievable. And I was a fan before, but my goodness, when you take the time to unlock and really peel away all the layers of his poetry, you get to really experience the real joy and detail and nuance in his work. The songs don't necessarily fit with the story all the time, so it's not new music, or the play hasn't been written to fit the characters. Every now and then they parallel, the stories do. So Hurricane, which is the song about the boxer, is sung by Joe Scott, who's a boxer, and you can read into between the lines there that maybe some of the bits of the narrative are in alignment with his, but it allows these moments where the characters can step out and step above the story and sing one of Bob Dylan's amazing songs. It's, as I said, it's a really special, really unique piece. The music sort of floats above the storyline, and the joy of that was the movement didn't have to necessarily be it didn't have to be literal. It could be poetic, and it could be about humanity and about real people, and I love that. There's a real mix of movement in the show, everything from some real 1930s vocabularies, a foxtrot and a turkey trot, and some waltzing, but then there's also some really abstracted stuff which helps tell the story, I hope. It's a very, people have responded very strongly towards it, and we've been making it for years, and I never get tired of it, because the same way that you can listen to one of Bob Dylan's songs again and again and again and hear something new every time, I watch that show again and again and again, and I see and hear and notice something new every time. So it's a real privilege to have been able to work on it.
That's cool. That's very exciting to hear.
Thanks for that. So we have to take a moment to just quickly address the shutdown, which has just caused so many visceral reactions in everybody in the Broadway community. So Girl from North Country was already open and got some really great reviews, was on the way to, building a successful and consistent audience. What was that like for you, finding out, the culmination of all this hard work and all these years of developing was the end result of the shutdown? Were you back in the UK at the time?
I had just landed, actually. We had our press night on the 5th, our opening, if you call it in America. We had our opening on the 5th of March. And then we recorded the album like 2 days later. And we got so lucky with our timing because we literally opened on Thursday, recorded the album the Sunday and the Monday. And I think the shutdown happened like Tuesday or that week, end of that week.
Yeah.
And I'd literally just got on a plane to go home. It happened so quickly that it's genuinely such a shock. I still even now can't believe Broadway's shut. You know, when you think there's certain kind of institutions that will never close, and it still doesn't feel quite real. It really doesn't feel real. We've got even some questions on the red carpet that night where kind of people asking, the journalists asking, how do you think it's going to affect us? And even then, like a week before the lockdown, I was still saying, look, everybody's gonna take precautions. It's all gonna be fine. There's gonna be some changes, but we're gonna carry on. And it was a real shock, and of course, utterly heartbreaking. There's no other way of describing it. You spend your whole life working towards, well, you know, one of the pinnacle of making a show on Broadway is because it's got that accolade, but also the amount of people that can see it, the amount of different types of people who can experience your work. And when we made that show, I don't think necessarily we had Broadway in mind. You know, we just made the show for what it was, and we loved it deeply. And the fact that this little beautiful piece of art that we made it to Broadway is still such a treat and such a shock for us, and we're so proud of it. So yeah, completely heartbroken that we didn't get a chance to see it fly, but it will continue to fly. It will definitely have its time, and we are very lucky that we managed to open. My heart, you know, aches for those that didn't quite get to open and didn't quite get to see their show with an audience. So, but yeah,
there's a number of shows that were in previews. There's a number of shows that were still in the rehearsal room that didn't get to open. You know, 6 was at their opening night on the night of the shutdown.
Night,
Yep. Flying Over Sunset was supposed to start previews, I think, that night. It was crazy. So yeah, it is in a sense very lucky that you guys did get to open, but
very
bizarre. And one thing too, before, I know Kevin has a question for you, but I wanted to follow up. Before we started, you'd mentioned that, if this is okay to talk about, you think that you are recovering from COVID-19. You said that you and your husband have a food bank. Can you give us just tell us about that?
Yeah, sure. It's my husband runs a theatre and a pub here in the north of England, and when they closed, they looked to do the most useful thing they could do, which was to become the ward. So that, I don't know if you use that word in America, we say a certain area and a collection of postcodes is called a ward, and they became the head food bank for that ward. So we get daily referrals from families who need food, and we hustle for food. No one brings us food. We call supermarkets and we call food charities, and we collect food as much as we can, and then we have drivers who are volunteers, and we send them out to families. Yeah, and we became quite ill. You know, the logic says it's because of the food bank, but we don't actually have contact with the people we're dropping food off with. We just literally drop it at their gate and knock on the door and walk away. But who knows where we got it. But we were both poorly for a few weeks, but we are better now.
Well, that's very, very nice to hear.
I love that British. We were poorly.
We were so poorly.
I love that. Oh, we were very poorly. It's a great word. You guys have some zingers. I love
poorly with the pandemic. Yeah.
As she sips a glass of wine.
As she just sips her wine.
Yeah, if you're not watching the video, you're only listening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good on you, Lucy. All right.
Look, it's 10 o'clock at night for me, guys. Come on.
That's right.
I know.
Ellyn Marsh was in Kinky Boots on Broadway, so she loves to bust out her British dialect for everybody.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay. Enough about the pandemic. Kevin, ask us.
Yes.
Let's talk about dance.
Yes, we're so glad you're better. But tell us about creating the movement to Bob Dylan's music. I mean, the man is arguably one of the best musical poets of all time, and your movement was called Delightfully Loose-Limbed, and a paradoxical mix of rough individualism and smooth synchronicity. Which is
such good words.
Some amazing words. Awesome description. So what was it like developing and creating this movement to the show?
I mean, no pressure, right?
Exactly.
Don't mess it up. No, don't worry, nobody said that to me. I'm really lucky to have worked with Conor McPherson, who's the writer and director. And what he's great at doing is he's got this great phrase he uses where he goes, "We'll know it when we see it." And I never genuinely felt any pressure to deliver a product. And that was the joy of it, the real joy of it. We would just start. And I know that sounds so random, but it was really brilliant, because sometimes with productions which have a name like Bob Dylan in it and big producers, is you're expected to arrive with all the answers. And absolutely, we never did that. And I do think also that's quite a Dylan thing, to discover and to not deliver the answer immediately, allow the audience to unpick it and see themselves and experience themselves in it. So obviously, to begin with, I went and listened to a lot of Dylan, a lot. And the thing that really struck me with his work was the poetry of it, and as I've mentioned, the kind of layers of it, but also the way in which, like all music, the best kind of music does is it has the ability for you to go, "Oh, that's my song," or "That's exactly where I am right now in my life." Yeah. And you really connect with something and you take ownership of it. So I knew immediately that that's what I wanted to do with the movement, is make it feel like it belonged to everyone, whether it was the actors and the dancers in the company, or whether it was the audience members, that there was a real sense of being able to connect with the humanity of it. Again, no small task. So I've got I don't think I have a particular style as a choreographer, but what I am interested in is I love humanity in all its glory. I love working with actors. I say a lot to, and a trained dancer myself, the thing I say the most to trained dancers is stop dancing, because it does this thing that I do as well. Yeah, where you go into the back of your head when you go into dancer mode. And what I want to do with actors in stage productions, and especially with Girl from the North, is bring them forward and make them really present. So we played a lot with, what I tended to do was teach a set of vocabulary and then let them feed it back to me, and then piece it together into structures and frames, and then let them work on their characters and then make offerings. The other thing, which I think is quite me, maybe, who knows, over the years, nearly 40 and still haven't discovered what my style is I often say,
That's all right.
I often say, yeah, it's a thing, isn't it? Together but not the same. And that's, I've come to really love that as a thing that I've found, is that I want it to feel like it's together but not identical. That I love that quote that you read about the individualism, because that's absolutely what I aim for. I want it to feel like it's from the same world and they're in the same moment together, connected, people moving absolutely together in a moment, but they're not trying to be the same. Right. And that's, yeah, and I love that, finding that in this show. And I think, you know, that style is not suitable for all musicals, absolutely not. But right. I feel like this show and my style just found a way to live together in the same space. Also, one other little thing to add about it is quite a lot of it is, especially in the second half, because they're big party scenes, quite a lot of it is improvised by the actors, which I love, because it gives them the opportunity to keep it live and keep it real. Not the big numbers. The big numbers, I'm like, stand on your number, guys. Stand your number. Right. But the party scenes, again, they've been taught physicality of the 30s. They've been taught how to hold themselves, how to be right historically for the time, physically, so a bit of body coaching work. And then again, I've taught them a variety of dance styles, and they can just go and dance with whoever they want to, whenever they want to. And those are my favorite things to watch, because I love watching the real kind of human interactions.
That's
it's very special.
Cool.
But yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that must be fun for the company too, to not sort of
absolutely
to have that freedom to live in the moment every night and make it what it is for you that particular day.
I hope so.
And that's just storytelling, right? I mean, it's just an extension of the story. So I think that's great. And not all choreographers sort of have that trust in others and sort of like putting, you know, not being precious and putting it aside and letting, you know, the continuation of the story go through movement. I think that's amazing. Yeah.
An interviewer did ask me at one point, like, how, when you leave the show, how do you know that you can trust the actors, you know, especially a show that runs for a very long time? I know, right? Clearly wasn't interested, but it's definitely about investment. And I think if those actors and dancers and ensemble members love the show as much as you do, they absolutely will hold it with the care and respect that you have invested in them as people. And they aren't just dancers in a line for me. They are people, and they are actors, and they are humans. And I love that has been cultivated by the director, by Connor, but absolutely, touch wood, have never had that happen in the years we've been doing the show.
That's so cool. And I love that your style, and just reading about you before we came on to do this today, it was so evident that obviously you say that you don't have a style, but the way in which you work is so more about delivering a story than it is about any specific style of movement. It's about using movement to tell that story, which is why I think
absolutely
your movement works so successfully in Girl from the North Country. One question that I have, just sort of on the fact that you've worked both on Broadway and in the West End, is how different is it? You know, are rehearsals run the same? Are actors coming in the same, with the same amount of preparation? I know one of the things Joanne Hunter said, that people dance in socks, and US choreographers think that that's crazy, but like actors in the West End like to dance in socks. What is your thoughts on the differences between working on Broadway and working on the West End?
That's so funny. Do you know, I've never experienced that. I've never experienced at rehearsals any dancers in socks. But to be fair, I work, maybe it was just that company. Maybe. To be fair though, the very specific genre of work that I work in isn't necessarily with musical trained dancers. I work with actors. And sometimes I get the joy of having some dancers in there as well. So mostly it's more like, put your cups of coffee down. You can't do this with a cup of coffee. No, it's not. You know, it's not a massive difference. I didn't notice much of a difference. What I did notice, the one thing in terms of how rehearsals are run, is in the UK, it's absolutely my responsibility to warm the company up in both rehearsals every day and and on stage. And then the dance captain's job then takes over to run that warm up. So rehearsals will start at 10, and from 10 to 10:30, if they're starting with the movement call, I have to run a physical warm up. Sometimes if it's a long rehearsal period, I'll run a full hour, and then I'll be using that hour to not only warm them, train them, try and build up some stamina for the show, but also teaching them bits of choreography out of context, so I can sort of be trying it out. And then the show as well, built into their show call, they have to all go on stage. They meet before, you know, they go and drop their bags, and they go on stage and they do a half an hour physical warm-up and a 15-minute vocal warm-up, and then they go and get ready for the show.
Oh, wow.
Whereas
have you guys ever, a lot of English, I was in Enron, and our English director was like, all right, warm up. We're like, what?
What?
Yeah,
sorry?
absolutely.
We warm up together. What is this?
What is this?
That's
when we came to the public at first, Connor and I carried on running rehearsal warm-ups, and the actors were coming, they just loved it. The company were like, I can't believe you give us like a free class every day. And I'm like, but if any of them get injured in the UK, if there's an injury, a physical injury, I'm responsible for that, unless it's a freak accident. But if somebody isn't warmed up and they pull their calf muscle, there's going to be a risk assessment which says that I didn't warm them up properly. And I can't believe as well, in the US, sometimes the first time you see your colleagues on stage is on stage. So you can arrive, go to your dressing room, and the first time you see them is you walk out on stage. You're like, oh, hi, how are you? I can't even fathom that.
Or
We
if
have
you
this
don't look at the
beautiful
in-out
country.
sheet and you see
Yeah.
an understudy, you're like, oh, you're on today.
People literally, I have run into that. I'm a swing, Lucy,
Yeah.
and I've
No,
gone on
oh,
stage and
respect.
people have been like, "Oh, I didn't know you were on today,"
Yeah.
and I'm like, "Yeah."
And we have 2 dressing rooms in our building. Like there's really no way to miss that, but it happens.
It's so funny. But Bjork Lee is a big
It's so
advocate
crazy.
for warming her
Mm.
her company up before
Yeah,
shows.
yeah.
She does her full 1 hour warm up. So I think it's
You know
really
what it's called,
interesting.
Kevin? Do you know what
What?
Bjork's? Do you know what her warm-up is called? Do you know, Michael?
No. What?
No, what I mean, I've done her show, so I'm interested
It's
to
called
hear.
whoop ass. Bjork calls it whoop ass.
That's not
Just called it the Bjork warm up.
Yeah.
whoop ass.
Whoop
That
ass.
makes sense.
That's
It did
amazing.
That
hurt,
tracks,
so.
I think
as
it's
it
good.
were.
It's really good because you get to check in with
Yeah.
each other.
Yeah, I
You know,
agree.
it's really good.
Yeah.
But I understand that we wanted to do it in America, and actually, it's the costs of that of calling people earlier was so enormous that it actually
Right.
it wasn't financially viable. Whereas in the UK, you don't have to pay people extra; it's just part of the contract.
I
But
feel
yeah,
like
that's
most
the
of
main
the
difference.
actors would probably voluntarily come to something like that if it was
Mm.
suggested at least for a while. And
Yeah.
Yeah,
you know, I think that's a really cool concept. It sucks that it's sort of on you if somebody gets hurt, especially if it's something that they're not taking care of themselves outside of work. But that's that's kind of
Yeah.
lame. But the idea that everybody has to
Yeah.
go and physically warm up is a really cool thing.
But the cool thing
Yeah.
is West End doesn't know any different. So
Right.
I
No,
feel like
exactly.
that's just how it is there. So
Yeah. absolutely.
That's true. Okay. Right. We're gonna take a break, but before we do, we're gonna play a little hot take with Lucy, just so
Oh
that
my
we can find
goodness.
out a little bit more about her before we take a quick break. So this one is specifically built not just for this one is specifically built for Lucy because she is so international, globally,
Oh my goodness.
and global and worldly. And Kevin and Ellyn have heard the same questions over and over again. So this one is pretty much completely new. Everyone can play. Lucy will answer first. The only rule to this game is that you just have to say the first thing that comes to your mind. Okay?
Just
So-
the first thing that comes to your mind. One
Well,
word
y-
or a sentence or what?
Yeah. The first answer. The idea is to
Okay.
not take too much time to think about your answer. Okay.
Okay.
So it's
Very
very
well,
international, this one today. Well, I don't know. We'll see. Okay. Number 1, burgers and fries or fish and chips?
Fish and chips.
Burgers and fries.
Fish and chips.
Oh, Kevin.
Ooh.
You always
Nice.
surprise me.
I gave up meat. So
Oh, fair.
I'm pescatarian.
Well, but fish is
so to
meat.
be
yeah,
fair-
Okay.
same.
Okay. Pescatarian.
Pescatarian, yes.
Number 2,
Yeah.
high tea or diner coffee?
Oh, high tea.
High tea.
Diner coffee, baby.
Diner coffee for me too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, I love the
Love.
idea of high tea, but diner coffee,
You
I
all
don't
look
think
very
I've ever,
common.
Lucy, I don't think I've ever had a high tea. Maybe we should, when we're
No,
back
that-
from
Oh,
the
that might
let's do
also-
that.
pandemic.
It's lovely. Super. A Darjeeling with a nice scone will be
Oh.
fine.
Oh,
That
well,
sounds
which
nice.
leads me to my next question. I should have said scones, but crumpets or donuts?
Oh, donuts. Definitely.
Donut.
Yeah, donuts, yeah.
Donuts, for sure. No question. Okay, this is a new kind of question. on a scale of 1 to 10, how do you rate Leonardo DiCaprio's accent in Blood Diamond?
That's a good one.
I can absolutely answer this straight away. It's like a -1. Bless him.
Yeah.
He's a good actor and he's great in that, but his accent is terrible.
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 Yeah.
I know
Terrible.
a South African pretty well, and it's even to
I mean, it's
my
bad.
untrained ear, it's
Terrible.
like really
Rough.
it's embarrassing.
Yeah.
I have to say though, South African is very hard because when I specifically like listen to you, Lucy, I hear a bunch of different
Yeah,
things.
no, she's a mishmash for sure. You're,
Yeah.
you're a
I'm
mishmash, Luce.
definitely a mishmash.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're like a mutt.
Yeah, I am. Absolutely. If I speak to my friends back home, they're like, what?
Okay, number 5. Ultimately, London or New York?
You
Yeah.
can't make me answer that. Okay, I can actually answer that really easily. I'm going to say New York because I don't live in London. I actually live in Yorkshire. And if you'd
Ah.
made me choose between Yorkshire, but I do love New York. I adore New
Well, I
York.
was going to
feel
make
like
you
it's-
pick between South Africa and like the UK
Yeah,
or
thank you. I
something like
appreciate
that.
that.
So,
I
okay,
appreciate
all right.
that. Thank you. Yeah.
And again, on that, would you rather have a weekend in the British countryside or be at the beach in Cape Town?
Oh, I mean the beach in Cape Town.
Yeah.
100%.
I
Yeah.
figured that
Town.
one. When you said that
Yeah.
you were raised at the beach, I was like, that's what she's going to say.
Yeah, there you
Yeah.
go.
Okay,
Easy.
a very
Easy.
British beer question. Would you rather have a Guinness or a Newcastle?
A Guinness. I love Guinness.
Nice. Me too.
I love a Nuki.
I love a Newcastle too. Yeah.
Nuki.
See, Guinness is a little.
Does anybody say Nuki? Is that a
They
real
do.
thing?
They say Nuki.
I love it.
But I
Okay.
I love it.
Do you prefer the metric system or the imperial system of measurement?
Now this is where it gets really embarrassing because I have to constantly Google this to which one is which. But I use like kilograms and
metric.
kilometers.
Yeah.
not
You use
miles
the
and
one that
pounds.
everyone
Which
else in the
one's
world
that?
uses except us weirdo Americans. Where everybody
Yeah,
else
the
uses
Americans use
metrics.
miles and pounds, and
Okay.
then yeah.
No, Brits use miles, but both, bit of both, but yeah.
Okay, and then on that also, do you prefer driving on the left side of the road or the right side of the road?
I mean the left. I definitely drove in Boston last year for a week. I was there, and I mean it was the most terrifying experience of my life.
And that's how I feel about driving on the left. Like I
Yes,
was like,
I have never been so scared
So
in
scared.
my
We
life.
talk about like
I mean, not
shoulder
only
tension.
it's backward. It's no, absolutely
Yeah.
not. Absolutely not. Nope.
Just
I'm good.
straight up
Turning,
backwards.
pulling out of junctions. Oh,
Yep.
jeez.
Mm-hmm.
I still
It's very
cold
scary.
sweat.
Oh,
Okay,
gosh.
last one before we take a break. 3 albums that you couldn't live without. This one has been
Oh,
on the questionnaire
stop
before,
it.
but 3 albums that you couldn't live without.
Oh my goodness, stop it. Very first album I ever bought was What's the Story, Morning Glory, Oasis, when I was growing up, which I love.
Oasis.
I also, oh gosh. At the moment, I mean, I frequently return to a Beyonce. Oh, Immaculate Collection, Madonna. I have it on vinyl, which I adore. And it was sort of like, it just keeps getting reborn. Do you know, at the moment, I'm completely in love with the Byrds because they've done some great Dylan covers. And I've got Turn, Turn, Turn on vinyl as well. And I play that on repeat as well. And I feel like those songs are kind of embedded. So I'd say, yeah, that's a good mix. We've
That
got
is a
some
good
Madonna,
mix.
Yeah,
some
that's a very
Byrds.
good mix.
Like
You're
you want
also
to
super
dance,
cool 'cause
Madonna
you're
comes
listening.
on.
Yeah.
And you're
exactly.
listening to all your records on vinyl.
Exactly.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back in 2 minutes with more from Lucy Hind. We'll see you on the other side.
Hey listeners, it's Clara here.
And it is Michael.
Choreographers, raise your hand if you could use more time, space, and money to create your work.
Oh my, it's like every hand in the city just went up. Like what? 1, 2 million hands?
All of them, and we can
All
see
of
them
them.
all from
And
our tiny
fingers, too.
windowless recording studio. All the fingers.
Okay, maybe not.
We all know the answer is all of you.
So, enter the CUNY Dance Initiative, or CDI. CDI is a residency program that opens the doors of City University of New York campuses to professional choreographers across New York City's 5 boroughs. They can offer you free space to create, teach, and perform, as well as financial support.
CDI has already helped over 130 local artists launch new work, develop new audiences, and establish new relationships with NYC performing arts centers.
And you know what? You could be next.
Actually, Michael, we've interviewed a ton of CDI resident choreographers over the years, I think during your tenure and before. And I will say they're just always such innovators in the dance community, and they're a really diverse collection of artists.
Yeah, so many incredible choreographers. You and I had the chance to talk with Tiffany Mills last year. We'll never, of course, forget Jess's awesome interview with 2019 Bessie Award winner, tap dancer Caleb Teicher.
And a while ago, we talked to Efrata Sherry, who's a B-girl and a house dancer. We talked to Annabella Lanzu, Benny Royce Royan. We even got to interview the director of CUNY Dance Initiative, Alyssa Alpine.
And you can find all of those interviews and more at podde.com, as well as Pod De Deux on iTunes. Now, missing this once-a-year application to be a CDI resident is heartbreaking, so do not let it happen to you. Make sure you jump over to the website, cuny.edu/dance initiative, and join their email list. And check out the homepage for application alerts, insider ticket discounts, and so much more. And if you just love dance, make sure you follow at CDI_dance on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Okay.
Back to the pod.
Welcome back to the Pod De Deux podcast. Ellyn Marie Marsh here. It is time to play a little Broadway trivia. Are you guys ready?
Yep.
So ready.
Very ready. Very ready. Just as long as we keep this one fair, please. It's
Yeah,
been,
no, totally fair.
Yeah, right. That's what you always say. And somehow it's never not. It's never fair,
Oh,
but
well,
whatever.
I don't see it that way. Potato.
Also, I should say, I have my own plug right here. I should say that you can catch Ellyn hosting Broadway Trivia every Thursday night live on Theater Mania's YouTube and Facebook pages. Just a heads up if you want to play Broadway Trivia.
Michael. All right. So, quick review. I will ask each team a question. Kevin and Michael will be playing against Lucy. After your question, you get a few seconds to come up with the answer. If you don't know, the other team can steal. First to 5 points wins, and no whinging, you two. All right? Come on.
All right.
What?
My hands are right here.
I
Okay.
feel like there's some history here.
So, question number 1 to Lucy. We're going to start with an easy one. Who choreographed the 2020 Broadway musical that features music by Bob Dylan and was transferred from the West End?
I mean, guys. It was me.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so
yeah.
I didn't know that. So when I wrote it, I didn't know. These are just
So
fly
you
off
wrote
my
it. You wrote it in October. Cool.
Yeah. It just flies. I had no idea. Thank you, Lucy. Whoa. Okay.
Great. I'm glad that everybody got that information out there.
Okay. Since you've been complaining so much about the fairness,
Yeah.
I've decided to give you a super duper easy one. Okay. Really simple.
Okay.
Name 5 West End theaters. This is shit come pouring out of your mouth.
Where's the old Vic? Is that one? The new Vic? Are either
No,
of them?
that's not a West End theater.
I literally couldn't tell you. I'm horrible.
The Gershwin? I
Yeah,
don't know.
You guys are not only letting yourselves down, you're letting
No,
America down.
The
okay?
the Schubert? No, those are all Broadway theaters. I don't know.
Okay, you know what?
I don't know. I'm embarrassed to
Nina,
say
the
that
Nina,
I
the
don't
Santa
actually
Maria.
know.
Okay. All right, fine. Well, you don't know it, so Lucy can steal. Lucy, would you like to steal? Name
There's
5
no
West
way.
End.
Yes, I would. I'm
Okay.
sort of the Noel Coward because that's
Yep,
where
that is
our
one.
where we started. We've got the Palace, the Palladium,
Yep.
the Piccadilly, the Ambassadors, the Adelphi.
Yep.
Lot.
Okay. Wow.
The
Awesome.
Drury Lane.
I
Cool,
could have
so-
guessed the Palace, maybe.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
should have said
Yeah,
the
some of them
Palace.
were
I
there,
said
right?
the Schubert, which
Yeah.
is based off the Schubert family in the United States, which is a terrible
You
guess.
guys-
It's not a bad guess. It's a good guess. Yeah.
Hey,
Anybody. Okay.
Embarrassing yourselves, and by yourselves I mean me. Okay.
In the country. Yeah,
Which
she stole.
2020 Broadway choreographer is also responsible for the choreography Sting's last ship in
Oh,
the UK,
come on,
Toronto,
Ellyn.
and on the US tour? What? What?
Guys, it was me.
Yeah. Yes, it was you.
Oh wait! Now that I turn to the answer, it is her. I didn't know
Yeah.
until I flipped the page. Okay,
This better
correct.
be like
Okay,
a very simple question because this is
yeah, no. You are down 3
this is
points,
ridiculous.
which means if you don't get this and Lucy steals, she wins without even getting to the final question. So,
I'm excited.
okay, continuing on our West End theme, which 2020 Broadway choreographer also choreographed Mamma Mia, which on the West End is now the 3rd longest running musical ever?
I know that. I actually know that. Kevin, do you know the answer to this?
no, but you do.
Yeah, I do. It's the guy who choreographed Tina, Anthony Van Last.
Okay, see, you guys aren't
Yeah.
total
I mean, I'm the worst, but
Yeah, see,
You know,
I
job,
know what you tried to do
Mikey.
there.
Okay.
You tried to give me one that
Okay.
was like kind of easy, but actually still like you didn't think I was going to get it. But I did. I knew that. I knew
Nice
that.
work.
nailed it. Good job.
Okay, so this last point is worth 9 million points. Whoever wins first wins the game. Are we ready?
Yeah.
Okay,
Let's
this
go.
is straight down the
We're
straight
still in
over
it,
the
Kev.
pipe.
Let's
I'm
go.
excited.
In what year did the original Drury Lane Theatre open?
In what year did the Drury Lane open?
The original
Original.
Drury
Hmm.
Lane Theatre. What year? It should
Is-
just flow off the tongue, if I'm honest.
Is that a West End?
mean, guys,
Fall off the tongue.
I don't. I don't think there's no
I
way that
once
Lucy actually knows
stayed in
this.
believe it or not, I actually rented a flat on Drury Lane next to the theatre, so I do actually know this answer. But I'm
Okay.
just scared.
1924.
I'm just gonna wait.
1924.
That's
Seriously?
really close, Michael. Really close. Really close. What is
No, it's definitely in like the 1800s.
You think it was that early?
it? Also
Yeah,
very
something like
close.
that.
Okay. Well,
So very, you're being very kind.
What is it,
Are you?
Lucy? Do you know?
I think it's like 1663.
Yes! It is
No!
1663!
are you kidding? First of all, that's BS. That you, Ellen, are you feeding these answers to our guests?
We're
No.
all looking at each other right now. She lived next door to the theater. Maybe, look up from your phone.
Oh yeah, maybe it said
You know what I
established
mean?
in 1663 somewhere.
Yeah.
That's and secondly,
Magic.
that's great. That's a long time
Magic.
ago.
I know,
I
right?
forget that things are so much
Yeah.
older outside of the
Yes.
U.S.
Yeah, exactly. So,
actually,
obviously-
literally today, I was
Go
going to
ahead,
say
what
one
were
of
you
the
saying?
West End theatres today has flooded. That's how old they are.
Oh, God.
Yeah, one of the basements is flooded. It was in the news today, but anyway, that's beside the point. They are very, very old. Very beautiful, very old.
Wow.
Wow.
That's a lot of antics, I think, on Ellen's part for trying to
Wow.
make our guests
Zero
feel welcome and
antics
making
that
us
I'm
look
aware
like
of.
idiots. But
Lucy won, obviously.
Lucy
yeah,
won.
obviously.
Lucy, you win $10,000.
Ellen's gonna provide the doll. Okay. All right. Let's get back to our interview here. Kevin, I know you wanted to find out a little bit about Lucy's dance history, so why don't you shoot?
I did, Lucy. Take us back to the beginning. You grew up in South Africa. So tell us a bit about how you initially found your way into dance. Let's start there.
I, like many little girls and boys, started doing ballet when I was very little, and yeah, carried on until I was sort of 18, 19. I did ballet and jazz, and didn't do tap, unfortunately. Deep regret. Need to have a word with my mother about that.
Me too.
And went to the most brilliant university called Rhodes University and did a psychology and drama degree. So we don't really have drama schools like they do in UK and the US. But we do have universities where you can go and get a normal degree and then you can do drama. And I went there because they have the most incredible drama department. They also have teachers there who have studied all around the world. So I got a real mix of training. They have a company there called First Physical Theatre Company, which is run by a fantastic choreographer called Gary Gordon, who actually studied in Laban and was sort of one of the original DV8 dancers, kind of very early, worked with Lloyd Newson. So there was that element of kind of anarchic 80s physical theatre. And then that matched with another wonderful movement specialist called Andrew Buckland, who studied kind of more Lecoq and clowning and Gaulier, sort of French and European style storytelling. So I had that real mix of ballet and then physical theatre. So everything I learned in ballet, we then threw out the window and we threw ourselves around, and I cracked ribs and broke toes, chucking myself around. And then, which was brilliant when you're sort of 19 and feeling anarchic.
Yeah,
and
very
then
Cirque du Soleil of you.
Yeah.
very, very Cirque du
Yeah.
Soleil. And then this kind of other incredible training of the minutiae of isolation and mime and economy of movements And that combination, I am just so, so grateful for. Went on to dance with First Physical for a few years after that, and then moved to the UK. And then actually thought I wanted to be a dancer. Obviously always wanted to be a dancer. Did a bit of work here in the UK, and then very quickly realized that I loved movement directing and choreographing, and ended up working in theatre as opposed to the dance world. Dipped my toe in a little bit, but very much have built a career more in the theatre world. It's interesting here because I'm not sure exactly what it's like over there in America, but the two industries are really quite separate here in the UK, the dance industry and the theatre industry. And choreographers do tend to cross over a bit, but you very much get theatre choreographers and dance choreographers. Maybe that's a broad statement, but that's my
We're starting to
experience,
see a little bit more crossover here
Yeah.
in the US, especially with the success of some of the dance television shows that are bringing, like So You Think You Can Dance, and some of those choreographers that are going in who have training outside to help choreograph on those shows. You've got people like Tonya Taye, who was one of your contemporaries on Broadway this year with 2 shows. And then a choreographer like Anne-Teresa de Keersmaker, who's an icon in the non-theater dance worlds, and she's choreographing on Broadway this year. And so much of your training, I think, explains why your movement base is so focused on storytelling, which is so cool. Your drama school training was so based in that. But you talked about moving to the UK. What was your inspiration to do that? Was it just sort of like that's what you did when you graduated from school, or did you move there to have a job? And also, when did you know you wanted to choreograph? Was it something that you found out as a dancer, or was it something you knew a long time ago?
I definitely knew I wanted to choreograph when in my final year. So I did 3 years in my degree, and then I did a 4th honors year, and I specialized in choreography and movement, and started making work then, and realized I absolutely adored it, and kind of did it because it was part of my course rather than because I thought I wanted to do it, and then went, oh my goodness, I love it very, very much. Moved to England actually because my parents both have British passports, and both sets of my grandparents are British. Suddenly I've gone very South African. Not sure what's happened here. My accent
it was Leo. He inspired it.
Plus, so kind of early 2000s, I was actually still studying at university. They moved to England, my entire family, both my sisters and my parents and my brother, and they moved, and I stayed in South Africa. So I always knew I was going to go and try it out. Came to England, tried it out, spent the first year working in like awful research job in an office, and doing what they call here is amateur dramatics. So it's kind of like, people's hobbies. They go and they put on shows, and it was literally the only way I could be involved, and it was the best decision I ever made. I adore those societies. I had a community, I was making art, and I met Slung Low, which is the theatre company of which I'm an associate of, and we were all students then, and we were just a bunch of artists making work together. And now that company itself has grown and expanded, and that whole team of people are now running theatres and directing massive shows, and arts leaders in the UK. So that is the kind of company I grew up with. Didn't think I'd last longer than about a year. I was so homesick, and then it's sort of 16 years this year that I've been here. So
wow,
it's stuck, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Can I ask my question?
Yeah, please.
Sure.
Well, I was really excited that you were coming on the show, Lucy, because I'm also a mom in the Broadway community. And already getting choked up. Here we go.
You'll set me off.
So there are so many challenges to being a mom, and there are so many challenges to being an artist. And could you sort of talk or speak to the positives and negatives of being an artist and a creator and balancing motherhood, and how that has affected your work or changed your work, and how you make it work?
All the work.
All of those things.
All the work. Gosh, I'm gonna have to be careful not to talk for too long here, because this is a topic very close to my heart. The challenges, I think, involve just the pure exhaustion of it. I thought I was busy before. I thought I had lots to think about before, and the sheer mental fatigue of taking care of another human being. And my husband is incredibly active father, an incredibly present father, and definitely does loads of the heavy lifting. And so it's not like I'm a single mom trying to do it. It's things like arriving at work knowing you've had 90 minutes sleep, and there's only so much sympathy that gets you. People are like, oh, you look a bit tired, but now you just have to be at work. And also you constantly feel like you're apologizing to both parts of your life. I constantly feel like I'm never present enough for my son, and then also I'm never feel like I'm quite prepared enough. I never feel like I'm quite ready enough when I walk in the room. I was really lucky in that I had a load of people around me who just encouraged me to get on with it. And I think that was the best advice I got, because I think he was only about 5 months old, and we took Merchant of Venice to Chicago, and it was a thrust stage, and we'd been at the Globes, we'd been in kind of a press arch, sort of extended press arch. And the director said, do you want to come? And I was like, I'm still breastfeeding, I have a 5-month-old. And he was like, well, bring him. And I did. I just got on a plane and took him on my own, and I remember standing at the back of the theater with him in a sling, and the company just sort of held him. And I remember teaching choreography at the Globe while breastfeeding, and everybody's like, wow, how are you doing that? And I was like, well, I just don't know what else I would do. I would never say no to the job, and I adore my son. And I'm lucky that the people I worked for absolutely embraced it. Connor, especially on the show. Davy was 14 months old when I started the show. And I don't live in London, so I was packing up a bag, getting on a train on Monday morning with him in a sling and a backpack on, and just arriving in London, and often taking him to rehearsals with me, and often just handing him off to a nanny, like 14 months old, staying in it, getting to a hotel at 6:30 or a room, building a cot, sticking tinfoil on windows to block out the sun, breastfeeding him to sleep, slumping into the couch going, I have to choreograph a number before tomorrow, right?
Oh my God.
Work, getting up, feeding him probably every 90 minutes through the night, getting up the next morning, doing it again. And I don't, looking back now, I have no idea how I did it. Absolutely no idea.
You just do it because
you
have to.
Do. Absolutely you do, because you love both equally, and they both inspire each other, and they both lift you up, and they both keep you going. So those are the challenges. What I would say, the best thing about it is, and I've spoken to so many directors and theatre makers who are moms as well, who all say the same thing. It genuinely, I think, has made me better at my job, because I have less time to waste on the stuff that's not important. I choose jobs that I only know are going to be challenging, fulfilling, and interesting. I have limited amount of headspace for the stuff that I think blocked me from making good work. I care less what people think. Yes. And I don't mean that in a kind of like, not in a kind of like, everybody must just get out my way, I know everything kind of way.
Right.
Just to know all the gump that comes with being self-conscious as an artist can sometimes help you. You end up making ego decisions because you're worried about what people are. You're worried about yourself as the choreographer as opposed to the work. And what being a mom has given me is it's just about the work, because that's all I have time for.
Right.
And it sounds like I was worried people might think I wouldn't be able to do my job properly because I was more tired and more busy, and I had a human to not kill, look after. But actually, it genuinely has made me discerning and passionate. And when I get to go to work, I love being there. And when I get to come home, I get to spend it with my son. So it's kind of been a real focusing of a lens for me in going, I understand what's important now. I appreciate that's not going to be everybody's reaction. I definitely couldn't have another one. Respect anybody who's got more than one. I have enough space in my head and in my life and in my work for one perfect small boy who we didn't think we could have anyway, and spent 10 years thinking we weren't going to have kids. And I think having him later in life was probably also a blessing. But yeah, it's love it. And also I'm so tired. all the time.
Thank you for sharing that.
Oh my gosh, it was gorgeous.
I feel like if you were here, Lucy, we'd just like hug each other and like have a drink, because you echo so many of my sentiments about I just don't give a shit anymore. I really don't. I am like like my daughter has made me like absolutely incapable of bullshit, because there's just no time.
No time. And same in the room with actors and dancers, and I think they do appreciate it as well. Well, I hope they do.
Yeah.
Is that I'm like, I don't have time for the nonsense to come into the room. Let's just make this thing together. I don't have time to indulge the nonsense. I'm not going to swear, but
I swore twice. Sorry, Mike. Sorry, I said shit and bullshit. So
we don't have any FCC regulations here, so I think we're fine.
Now I've said it 4 times. But I just applaud you, because there's so many there. We have a very tight knit group of moms that are on Broadway, and I'm sad that you didn't get to experience it a little bit more. But when you come back, but it's really grown, and I think that it's really important for us to be vocal that you can create. You can be an artist, and you can be a kick-ass mom. You can do it all with your village, of course. But I think it's I think the stories of moms, and especially creators, choreographers, being, leading a company, it's just so inspiring, and it's important. And so thank you for sharing that.
You're so welcome.
Yeah.
I think on that note of just getting to know you and realizing how empathetic and seems like selfless you are, getting to know you. I want to ask you about your work with David Toole. David Toole, for those who haven't seen his work, is a self-described disabled dancer who moves and dances without legs, and his work is absolutely incredible. Tell us about how you two started working together and the importance of your work together in your life.
Oh, Dave is so remarkable. He's not only an amazing artist and dancer, but such an amazing guy. And I'm so proud that he's genuinely, I can brag, he's one of my dearest friends now. I saw Dave in a DV8 show when I was still a student in South Africa. I came over here to visit my parents, and we went to a DV8 show, and I waited at the stage door for his autograph and chickened out. And then about 4 or 5 years later, I moved to the UK and ended up being cast in a play with him. It wasn't even a dance show. It was a straight play, and there were only 4 of us in the show, and we toured nationally. And it was just the 4 of us, 5 of us on the road together, and we were doing kind of different city every day. It was insane. And we got really close, and we were in various other shows together over the years. And obviously I sort of always loved his work. And then we, in 2012, it was probably before 2012 when we had the Olympics here, there was a load of funding applications for new pieces of work. And we'd made a little 2-hander that we'd been kind of joking about in hotel rooms, for months. And we eventually made it. And it was about kind of the cartoon versions of ourselves, where a cartoon version of me, sort of blonde, average everything. So, average height, blonde hair, blue eyes, standard dancer, walks into an audition room and doesn't really stand out from anybody else. And then the complete opposite end of the scale, this extraordinary man who's a dancer and is defying every kind of, stereotype that exists around disability and who he should be and who he wants to be. And the show was called Extraordinary, and it was just about that experience of me desperately wanting to dance with him, and desperately his biggest fan, and him just genuinely fed up, reached a point in his career where he was like, I only get cast because I have no legs. And I'm there going, nobody casts me because I look like everybody else in the rehearsal room, and me dying to be extraordinary and him dying to be ordinary. And we had this kind of very human piece, and we end up being quite nasty to each other in the piece, and then we make up, and then we dance at the end for a good 20 minutes. Just a really beautiful duet that we had some guest choreographers in. And we toured that internationally, and we got very close, and then we got some funding to make another piece together with a dance company in Cape Town. And it kind of just grew. We worked with various integrated dance companies. People for a while started saying, oh, you do disabled dance, integrated dance. And I genuinely found that incredibly uncomfortable because I feel like I worked with some amazing dancers, and I don't just mean that like in a like, no, actually everybody can be a dancer way. It never felt like I was ever working in a different industry. It just felt like I was still making work. It felt like I was still making genuinely beautiful human work with some wonderful dancers. And it was really special. I was one of the dance captains on the Paralympics opening ceremony, and Dave was dancing in it, and he flew above the whole stadium. And there was this amazing moment where we were just sitting in the stadium in the pouring rain on the day, expecting, however many 500,000 people in the stadium and 4.5 billion on the TV or something to watch it live. And we were both sort of lying on our backs, just looking up at the sky. And he just said to me, he was like, do you remember when we were in a really rubbish hotel room, like drinking disgusting beer from the supermarket, talking about how one day we'd take over the world, and now we're doing the Paralympics opening ceremony.
It's an incredible story.
That's so
he's an extraordinary guy.
Yeah, and if you haven't seen any of his work or any of your work together, there's for the listeners out there, you can Google Lucy and David's names, and there's some really beautiful images and video out there. You talked a little bit a few minutes ago about Slung Low, and I just want to address that really quick. There's so much about it, but then also so much that's very difficult to understand. It sounds incredible. So you're an artistic associate there. You've been with the company for like close to 10 years now, I think. It's a theater company that specializes in creating, quote, epic productions in non-theatrical spaces, which sounds so right up your alley, first of all, and so awesome. So how did you become a part of it, and is that description correct?
Absolutely correct. Slung Low is that community of artists that I met when I first started out. I realize I talk a lot, so I'm going to try and give you a concise answer and encourage listeners to go to the website.
You're good.
We make such a variety of work, and the company, like any theatre company, has evolved over, I think I've probably been with the company maybe close to 13 years, actually. And the work that we make is constantly evolving. The things that stay with the company and are now consistent are, one, I would say 90% of our shows are on headphones. So the audience receive a set of headphones and a little receiver box, like a radio transmitter, and all the actors are mic'd up, and every actor has an earpiece as well. And the shows are always outdoors or always on sites. Twice now we've made shows on water, in massive docks, and we had a ship. We did a adaptation of Moby Dick called The White Whale, where the whole ship started under the water, and then we pumped air into cylinders, and the whole set floated up, and then the actors jumped on. It was amazing. And all the actors had to drive boats, and it was amazing. And
I want to be in this company. That's
I know.
awesome.
I want to drive a boat.
Yeah, seriously.
When are auditions?
We're all oddly out
so
of
much
work,
fun.
so if
Everybody's free. The great thing about that is it's very filmic. You can have this 3D experience, but the actors can talk this quietly, and everything is underscored. There's a full movie soundtrack. Every actor has the director in their ear the whole show, and that's because when we're outside, anything can go wrong, and it has gone wrong lots of times. So it'll be mid-show, and the director will be like, right, so the audience are coming around the corner on Princess Street, please stand by. They'll be with you in 3, 2, and a truck has driven in the way. Great, we're going to divert them via this street, and like, it's a completely live experience.
Wow.
So-and-so's mic has died because he got it wet. So we're going to skip his monologue, and we're going to go to you now, Sally. And so you're acting, and you have the director in your ear the entire show. The second thing that is really vital and consistent to the shows, they're all community shows. So anything up to sort of 300-500 members of the community are in the cast as well. So you have huge epic scenes, and they're all community members. And then what that leads to as part of being a community-led, so we have professional actors and community actors, and then made for and with and in a particular community, and usually about a particular community. Then that goes with that as well. It's we eat together, we hang out together, we have it makes sense that that same theatre company has been turned into a food bank for during this crisis, because it's about being useful and being kind. We now have a community college where you can do free courses, free adult courses, anything from wood whittling to cooking to playwriting to CPR, and they run throughout the year at the theatre. So yeah, it's a very special company, and it's very similar to the public works at the public theatre. Those kind of lovely big shows they do, where they're community driven and they're incredibly high quality shows. But yeah, it's a very special team and family, and I wouldn't have a job in the UK if I hadn't met that community.
It sounds absolutely amazing.
It really does.
Sounds absolutely amazing. It also sounds like a very possible like future for theater. Just with
exactly what I was
the
thinking,
combination of something that could happen, sooner than later, with the idea of sort of being in open spaces and the individuality of performance, and everybody can sort of have their space, but the combination of media and technology, and it's just absolutely incredible. Thanks for sharing that.
Last question, Lucy, before we let you go. So we're looking at this season, this unprecedented season, with 9 incredible women who were hired to bring shows to Broadway. What does that mean to you in terms of representation, and how do we keep this momentum going?
I read your amazing article about the statistics of all that, and it really shocked me, because I hadn't really, even as a woman, hadn't really engaged with those numbers and those percentages, and it really, really got me thinking. I think the most important thing about all this is that diversity of voices, no matter what kind of diversity that is, just makes better storytelling. Otherwise we just become a massive echo chamber, and it's not just women, but women from different classes, sexual orientations and racial backgrounds who've been locked out of Broadway and the West End for so long. But it is those organizations, those institutions at the top of our industry that absolutely create our shared theatrical heritage. So it's not just about giving other people a chance, it's about better storytelling, better variety of voices, and therefore drawing in a better, more wider audience as well. We can tell wider stories, we can capture a true representation of the world, rather than kind of just spinning around in a drum of the same kind of styles and things. It is wholly a good thing. Absolutely, it's good news for everybody, not just women. How we keep the momentum going, I'm not sure. I don't know who those gatekeepers are, and I don't know how we do it. I think one of the ways is talking about it, is noticing it, stopping and looking at it and taking note of it and going, this shouldn't be a big deal, but it is, and let's celebrate that. Let's note it, and for which I congratulate you guys and this really brilliant chance to come and talk today as well. Note it, congratulate ourselves, maybe try a bit harder, and keep driving forward.
That's
amazing.
So good. You're so good. You're so good at this.
You're
You're so
a good
awesome.
person. Wow.
Can you just talk me to sleep every night? It's like I put Lucy on, and I'm like, sorry.
Stop it.
Like, tell me a story, Lucy. I just open her up in a little box and just listen. Hey, Lucy.
No, I think you
girl?
come over to the U.S. and let's start Slung Low 2 right here in the U.S. And
my goodness.
That would.
I'll tell you something I haven't tell you is also I married Slung Low. So the guy who runs Slung Low, that dude, number whatever on the top 100 most influential men in British theatre. I'm married, so I did very well.
You did a great job.
Wow. An amazing person. Like a very, how, you know, your intelligence, your eloquency is so beautiful. Lucy, thank you so much for sharing your outlook and your artistic intelligence and everything that you do with us today. We're so lucky to have spent the time with you today, and thank you for putting up with Ellyn's unfair trivia game. But
I'm sorry, she won fair and square. She won fair and square.
well,
That's all
you
I'm
know
saying.
what? After all that, I don't doubt it at all. All right, thank you guys so much for joining us today. A couple of little things to drop. If you do want to follow and keep track of what Lucy is up to, Lucy, what are your social media handles that people can keep up with you at?
Twitter is the best one, and it's Lucy May Hind, because that's my middle name. And I think on Instagram I'm Lucy Hind. Nice and easy.
And it is, just for the sake of it too, is there anything for Slung Low as well?
Yeah, I think we're just at Slung Low. But also, if you go onto mine, I think in my bios I've got the Slung Low one.
Great. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Also, make sure you check out Broadway Trivia. Ellyn, where can people find Broadway Trivia?
Thanks. We're at Broadway Trivia on the Instagram, and then you can follow Theater Mania for our Thursday trivia as well.
That's very cool. And as Lucy so kindly mentioned, you can also check out my blog, New York City Dance News and Culture, at nycdancenews.com, where that article is that she was talking about with all those statistics. We have a lot more interviews and great content coming up on the Pod De Deux podcast in the next few weeks. We're going to get as many of the women who choreographed on Broadway, or were supposed to choreograph on Broadway, coming up in the new episodes. You can listen to the Pod De Deux podcast anywhere that you find your podcasts now. Make sure that you follow us on all of our social handles at Pod De Deux on Twitter and Instagram, and head over to the Facebook page and give us a like, and you drop any comments that you think that you want to let us know about, and hit up the website, poddedeux.com. And you can watch all of this on the YouTube page if you're not already doing that. Lastly, you can follow us on our social media handles. I am on Twitter and Instagram at Michael Mahany. Ellyn.
And I am, go ahead,
Kevin.
Ellyn.
Nope.
I'm Ellyn with a Y. I'm Ellyn Marsh on all the things.
And I'm at Raponey on Instagram.
All right. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Ellyn and Kevin, for being champions of dance. Thank you, listeners. We wouldn't be here without you. We will see you soon on the Pod De Deux podcast with more of the badass women of Broadway. Lucy, thank you again. We'll see you guys soon. Thanks again.
Thank you, Lucy.
Thank you.
Bye.